So in the case of the Chinese, they're no longer the low-cost producer. In the case of the Germans, they're not going to be able to maintain their industrial output. You break down those systems, and we have no choice but to look in China in a new light. If China and Germany go the direction I'm expecting, then that's a lot of industrial plant, a lot of manufacturing that creates stuff that is going to go away. And we're going to have to build it ourselves if we still want things, especially in the electronics and computing space. So the proportion of workers in the United States that are in services is going to have to shrink in order to grow these other sectors. The balance of production and consumption is what defines economic health and structure. And even if AI does everything we hope it will do, that's only on the production side of things. You still need consumers, and that means you still need people who are under age 40 to do the consuming. Probably, assuming the current pace of technological advance holds, big if, we'll be able to do a lot of apples within the next 5 years, but things like mangoes and avocados and cherries are much
I think mangoes were what you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to people in the AI space.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people who are doing something love it, in anything. You know, people who are building automobiles tend to think that the future is automobiles, and people in the AI space think that AI is fabulous. Some of them have very large doubts about something we'll get to in a moment, which is the veracity of stuff. I don't think that's going to not happen. What you need is energy, and as you very correctly said, you need the chips, and we're chip deficient. And according to what I heard from you, and I thought it was very insightful, we're going to have terrible shortage, a crisis in the high end of chips, which do AI, but do a lot of other things. Explain for our viewers the chip shortage.
All manufacturing processes have multiple steps in order to make it happen, and the final product that comes out of the assembly line is only one step of that process. You have to build things that build things that build the facilities that build the end product. And in the case of the high-end chips, 10 nanometer and smaller, there are 9,000 steps just to get the facility online. And the majority of those steps are 4,500 companies that only produce one product for one customer, and they're spread out around the world with a heavy emphasis on North America and Europe. So if one country, for whatever reason, kind of falls out of that constellation, we lose the ability to attempt to be able to make the chips, because these companies have been specializing on this for decades. It's globalization in physical form, and a lot of them only have a staff of 50 or less, and they're the only people on the planet who know how to do that one thing. So if something happens to, say, Germany, which with its demographics suggests that something's going to happen very hard to Germany, we lose the lenses that are necessary in the lithography, and we will have to rebuild that environment somewhere else with a more stable label pool and the adequate capital and labor supply. That can't be done in 6 months. That's a 2 to 10 year process. And the more steps that we lose, the longer they're going to be out of whack. When I look at artificial intelligence, when I look at the iPhone, when I look at satellite communications, when I look at the smart grid or EVs, everyone needs the same quality of chip in order to do these things at scale. But if we lose 80% of the chips, we lose 80% of those applications. And will AI be the one that ultimately rises to the top and we collectively decide as a society this is what we absolutely have to have? Maybe we will. Or maybe it has to be server farms. Media is a different category, and it's definitely wrapped up in the whole technological discussion. It used to be, if you go back to the 80s and before, is that every newspaper, even relatively small ones, would have multiple offices around the world where you would have copy editors and journalists and writers and the rest.
I was there.
And there were multiple eyes on every piece that was produced, so there were lots of places to do kind of a check to make sure it passed the smell test. But as the technology advanced and we got faxes and then email and then attachments and now algorithms and AI, the number of people that were in use steadily shrank, especially away from the mothership.
But the main thing was there was suddenly the advertising flowed away.
Absolutely.
And the revenue was not there. The model in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, publishing had a huge return on equity. It was one of the most profitable things you could do. And then it collapsed.
Because it digitized.
It collapsed because the advertisers didn't have to pay for the paper and ink and printing. They could go straight, and they could identify the customer and be much more targeted.
And we went from broadcasting to narrowcasting, and lots of people with lots of eyes looking at every piece to very few people. As a result, a lot of our reporting just turned into opinion instead of fact.
Peter, what do you think the United States will look like in 10 years?
The industrial plant of the country will be over twice the size it is now. The amount of blue-collar workers will probably be triple the size it is now. And I expect the integration with Mexico to be spectacular, and Mexico will be the fastest growing economy in the world. They're already our number one partner demographically with immigration and economic interconnections and border crossings, legal border crossings. We are nearing already the stage of a NAFTA 3 to more tightly integrate the North American space. The question in my mind isn't what the United States or North America is going to look like. That's pretty clear to me. It's what's every place else going to look like? Because we're looking at a demographic collapse on a scale we have never seen in human history right now.
We're also looking at a time when the world population is greater than it has ever been, 10 billion.
Not for much longer.
But unfortunately, the people are in the wrong place, and they're trying to move. All the people in Africa would like to be in Europe, and an awful lot of people in Latin America would like to be in the US, and they're trying to get across the southern border even as we talk. It does seem to me that maybe we could use some of those people to make up for this deficiency in labor.
In times gone by, the United States has had an outward-looking immigration program, and that has served us very well. It doesn't come for free. There's some cultural quirks that come with that people are nervous about. We've done this before. The problem is that we're going to have to really reach out if we want to do that. Mexico began the industrialization process 35 years ago, which means the birth rate in the last 35 years has dropped by more than half. So net migration from Mexico to the United States has now been flat to negative for almost 15 years. And the Central Americans are aging faster just from a little later starting point. And so within 5 years, net migration from Central America will probably flatline as well.